Hi everyone, welcome back. I thought I would do a talk about our first sort of results for our senior team. Not so much like talking. Sorry, they're the youth results. Yeah, the senior results. Not so much talking about the individual results per se, but just from the more just like a general discussion about what we've learned about our tactic and about our players, about our team from these matches, about what our plans are moving forwards. I think the first thing probably to point out is that I think this we'll roll with this because we've already created a lot of content talking about this, designing this. So I think we're going to just I don't know what the tactic will eventually look like. We're about to have a discussion, but there are some issues with this. It's we're getting things working. We're talking about trying to get certain concepts working. We're having, a certain degree of success with those, but other things aren't really aren't working as well as they could. There's certainly, so we need to try and evolve or whatever over time. But I think conceptually, playing some kind of formation that's like, we said we didn't want to have wingers, but there is another thing that all of the top tactics have. So there's two common components. Basically, every single one of the top teams in the game is pretty much running. So they're both running. They're running it AML and AMR, and they're also running fullbacks. So I think what we'll try and do is that. So this formation is like really cool, I guess, from the perspective that it doesn't run AML or AMR, and it also doesn't run fullbacks. So it's missing the two most popular things that all the most popular tactics in the game have. So I think it'd be pretty hard to really do anything that's sort of fighting against the grain more than that. I think the only thing that we kind of could do is play like a really central, like a really centralized formation, like play a flat back four or something, and like have all the other players like through the middle. But I think that would be, and I'm sure, we could get that working, but I feel like it would be there'd be less to learn from that and less to generally apply, because I think, even if you do want to play the wingers and the fullback, like, one of the more popular the formations or variations of that, like with this type of setup, we will still have attacking width. And so there will be lessons to be learned, I guess, from what we're doing for everybody. Whereas if it's really, really narrow, a lot of the things that there will be a lot of tactical things that we will need to address that won't be that applicable to a lot of people playing the game, because they will have their attacking width, their wingers or whatever, where that's coming from, and we will be talking about effectively how to build a formation that doesn't have that and sort of overcomes that, where that doesn't particularly help everybody who's playing with those wide players, which is nearly everybody. So we figured that this is like maybe a good balance between, like I said, not having the wingers or the fullbacks. And by wingers, I mean the AML and AMR or the DL and DR. So it doesn't have those. So it's very, very different to nearly all the... Like, this is pretty much different to nearly every... Obviously, whatever formation we pick, somebody's going to be playing something similar. But from a trends basis or from a meta sort of perspective, this is completely different to everything that's pretty much popular out there. So I figured it does make sense to roll going forwards. I think just fleshing this out, and plus we've already talked a lot about this, trying to get this to work. So I think it just makes sense to continue the story, just to try to continue to evolve and improve this. And I think also the other benefit of this is that when we do end up in higher divisions and we are playing against AMLs and AMRs, that's going to be really problematic for us. So I figured that might make nice content, like what things can we do to try to make it less problematic for us, let's say. I don't think it's like, at the end of the day, if they're playing AML and AMR and we got no fullbacks, like at the end of the day, they've got basically, it's not going to be optimal, let's say, no matter what. Like, you certainly want those. It's going to be suboptimal from that perspective, but there are things that we could do to help. That's the thing. So, and it would be probably interesting discussion to be going over those things. So I thought, well, we'll roll with this. So with that in mind, I think we're just going to now talk about how we can go from what we've been using, which is something like this. I think the main things that we ended up sort of tweaking from match to match in the end was this guy. Sometimes we had him central midfielder. Sometimes we were running him box-to-box midfielder. And the other thing, when he was central, as box-to-box, we were always having him on this side, basically. But sometimes we had him central midfielder on this side. Or we also are running him central midfielder on this side sometimes. And when we were doing him on this side, we were typically offsetting our destroyer to here. So these are pretty much in the end the only real adjustments we were making outside of like when we had to do subs and stuff, because it was sort of, we didn't, for example, we bring on a AMR or something, we'd bring this guy up or something, but that's just forced because of the limitations in our squad at the moment. So this was the main the main different sort of things. Now I think ignoring obviously we got a lot of limitations with our players, so I'm trying to think forwards, less about trying to at the moment to get the most out of our current squad, and more now thinking towards the future, like what's the most flexible, most sort of, I don't know if like optimal is the word, but let's go roll with it, like the most optimal versions of this to try to improve this going forwards, and something that has the most like some kind of tactical versatility in matches to be able to change some things up depending on game states and things like that. So I think there's three different things like I just covered we were running, and I think I'd like to talk about what I sort of perceive as the issues. Now I think all of these variants though, like they all were trying to accomplish two things, and they all of them did those two things, broadly and generally speaking. So one of those two things was to try and make it so that from my three centre halves, that I'll click on this guy to show. So this guy, for example, he is a very one-dimensional centre half. Let's say, like he's excellent at tackling, and he can't really do anything else. Yeah, the marking is okay or whatever, but basically his tackling is like at this level, it's like as good as you'll ever see, basically. So like 80 tackling is just awesome, but he's like really slow. He's bad aerial ability. His marking is okay or whatever. His positioning is sort of okay, but at its core, like he's just not really great. Like the main things you do want, just say basically it's like the marking and the positioning is fine, like, but I think if for example the tackling was like 50 or something, he would be really bad centre half. He's just, you don't need, he's just really, really slow. And obviously when he's facing off against much, much faster attacking players, like the discrepancy is a big issue. So like there is a big difference between like 16, 26, 36, 46, etc. speed. They're all technically sort of slow, but this is really slow. So even an attacker that's only like, that you would think isn't that fast, like even at like 46, 50 speed or something like that, you would think of him as a bit slow, a bit average, whatever. He's still way faster than this guy. And if he happens to come up to someone that's genuinely fast, he's just going to be really exposed. And you have to basically play this guy knowing full well that that's going to be the case, right? Like sometimes they're just going to be too fast for him, basically. So, and he's weak in the air as well. So But the main takeaway from this guy, though, is that his tackling is awesome. You want him you want him attempting as many tackles as possible. That's what you want. You want him just going in, diving for the tackle. You don't want him to hold back. You don't want him to be the one that needs to deal with the cross or something because of his bad aerial. You don't want him to deal with anything, quite frankly, because unless it's going straight to him, he ain't the first one getting to whatever that thing is because he's so slow. So with him, the thinking here is basically like, we set him to stop us, so that he run, like, as soon as there's an attacker near him, he's going to run in, try and make the tackle. He'll win it. He won't win it. If he wins it, great, he won. If he doesn't, whatever, he lost it, and he's kind of like out of the picture at that point. He runs, he's gone, gets beaten, and that's okay because now we've just got to set up so that how do you say, like a point of our other defenders is to deal with that situation when it unfolds and to be ready for that situation if it were to unfold. That's key as well here. So what we've then got is our ball playing cover, and this is quite the opposite. He can sort of do everything here. He can tackle quite well. He's got good marking. He's fast enough to deal with whatever, and he's got really good aerial ability to deal with the crosses. So he's sort of the guy. Now cover just means he's generally going to back off and back off and back off. So if they play a through ball, hopefully, while some attackers may be faster, hopefully he's fast enough to get there first because the attacker might have extra distance to make up. I think he also had decent... so he's got good marking, so if they end up... the winger ends up coming around or something, and then there's players to cross to and stuff, he hopefully will pick them up well enough to be close enough to disrupt that. So he's kind of just from the perspective like our dealing with all of the emergency situations, let's put it that way. And then the guy on the other side, his thing that he primarily ends up dealing with actually is headers, looking at the stats, and interceptions. And I can sort of see why, because it's like when they're beating around, he's also in the box, so he's also going to have to marking is important for him, so we want the marking, we want the aerial ability, and he does attempt some tackles, so that's also important. But he gets a lot of interceptions. I can sort of see a lot of balls get knocked out, like in order to come through here because of the destroyer. You're not passing through. You're playing a through ball. You're going over the top. So he ends up, challenging for some of the headers for that, and he ends up getting a lot of interceptions. So basically, for this guy in particular, aerial ability, speed is kind of what we want there. But also just the generic stuff. He's still attempting some tackles, and he still would need a mark when it comes in. So I would say in particular, like the thing that we ideally would have more with this guy would be he's got good marking. The tackling sort of ideally obviously it would be higher, but I would say when we're looking for an upgrade here, we would just want higher tackling. But it doesn't need to be super high, but just a bit higher. It shouldn't be that hard to get higher than 57. And I think that level of marking was probably fine for us. The positioning, is another one for this guy. It seems like he's got a lot of sweeping up, like a lot of interceptions to get and stuff. So it seems like the positioning is pretty important for him as well. And then we just want him to have a bit more speed to get to them first. And more aerial ability because he's contesting a lot of headers. So this guy, for example, we could definitely get an improvement on. This guy, I'm not really sure. We'll have to assess options as and when they come. Obviously, he's really old as well, so he's not a long-term solution here. But I think for him, this one, we're just keeping an eye out for a really, really, really high tackling player, and then whatever the other limitations are that they have. At least the way that this tactic is set up, they can basically be anything, and they're okay. They can basically have, this player doesn't even need to be able to mark. That's the thing, because he's just lunging in and making the tackle. So even if the marking was low, that wouldn't matter from the perspective the attack's coming from where we're trying to get them to come from. It could matter in other situations, obviously. So, ideally, you still obviously want higher marking and higher aerial ability. He still is contesting some headers and things sometimes. They're still happening sometimes. It's just that the marking and the aerial ability and that is more important for the other two centre halves. This guy, though, the tackling is way, way more important than the other two centre halves, and can kind of illustrate why in the stats. I don't know if we want to do this for. Probably won't do this for everything, but let's just. I think the most recent results. Some matches it's way more to the fore than others. This sort of effect, but you can see here. So here's a very good example. So like he's attempted 6 tackles this game and won all 6. Big deal for us. Whereas the other 2 centre halves combined only attempted 4. In this game, again, he got 3. He's not always going to get way more, but he shouldn't sort of have way less either. That's the thing. So he had 3. The other 2 combined had 4. In this game, he had 7. The other 2 combined had 3. In this game, he had 5. The other 2 combined had 3. So I'm not going to go through all the matches, but I think that's enough to illustrate the point. Like, he's attempting something like 1.5 times as many tackles as the other 2 centre halves are combined. So something like 3 times as much as each of the other 2. Something like that. It's a lot more. And that's on purpose, because we've got this player who's just like world class at one thing and otherwise bad, and we just want to maximize getting the most out of that one attribute for this player, which is what we've done here. So getting the most out of an extremely limited player. Now, so when we have this I'll just go through, that's the one thing. And the other thing is just, we are trying to have the attacks build up through the right, might be the way. We're not necessarily wanting all the attacks to finish or conclude through the right. How we're set up, that is kind of happening though, but that's not that's like a effect or a byproduct of what we've done. It's not really necessarily what we want. What we do want is them to build up through the right. And the reason for that in particular is because if we lose the ball, or the attack fails during the build-up, we will lose the ball on the right. So basically, if we're attacking through here, and this winger gets tackled, let's say when he's here, this is where we've lost the ball here, which means that the other team is likely to counter-attack against the defender that we want. That's the main thing, right? Now, as to when we've got the ball up into the more advanced place, like we're okay, for example, for the ball to end up coming back across and whatever. Like, we don't mind that happening. Now, the way our tactic is set up, it is sort of set up that it does quite often just end up coming through here. And I'm not sure that that's good. It does mean that with this variant, for example, it means this player is a bit isolated. If we do this variant, it means that these 2 guys are moving in sort of unison quite often. They're sort of like absorbing up the same space and getting in each other's way. So it's like the opposite of being isolated all of a sudden. He's just like crowded. They're crowding each other. By that, I'm kind of meaning like these roles, wide midfielder and central midfielder, I think we might have had him before as winger, by the way. Sorry. For most of our matches. But I think wide midfielder is similar in regards to getting each other space anyway. It's just that they would be looking to dribble with the ball less. But anyway, I think we had him set as winger. So what I mean by that is these roles basically are asking these, when we're attacking, to move up a bit. And a very similar sort of movement for this guy. And same as when they're defending. So basically, as we attack, these guys are likely to move up together. And as we defend, they're likely to move back together. So they're kind of just moving up and back with each other all the time. So they're kind of like they're taking up the same space. They're not, you ideally want them a bit offset, a bit staggered. Just so that they're not in a direct row, and it creates better passing angles and better things like triangles and stuff. So this guy, for example, the attacking midfielder role, he's likely to be a bit ahead of these guys. So even though they look obviously in a row here, if you can think about it in the transitions, this guy will come back further. So when out with these two players will be back together when we're defending, but this guy won't be. So when we get possession of the ball, these guys will be here and this guy will be up, right? But ideally, what we would have is these guys not in a row together. I'm not sure. That's the issue. I'm not saying necessarily what. We'll talk about solutions after. Right now, I'm talking about problems. So this is a problem. Now, when we go box to box, however, I think it helps that a bit. It means, for example, when we are defending, this guy will come back further. So when we win possession, he will be back farther than what the wide midfielder is likely to be back. So they won't be directly in a row at that point. And then as they move up, they will be moving up at the same time. And the wide midfielder should generally stay a bit ahead of the box-to-box until the box-to-box catches up. And then he will go up even ahead further if the attack hasn't broken down yet. And then when we lose possession, they will come back, but the wide midfielder will get back further. So basically, the wide midfielder, to put this another way, when we're attacking, is sort of coming up, or winger. Doesn't matter what, pick whichever. I'll put back to winger, sorry. So when we're attacking, he will be coming up to about, let's just, it depends on the situation or whatever, but I'm just talking about things conceptually here. So let's say he comes up to about here. And when we're defending, he might come back to about here. So he's sort of going up and back, up and back. But this guy is going up and back, up and back. So as the possession is gained and lost, this guy's kind of like can catch up, so to speak, all the time. Now that, however, that's dependent on us retaining possession long enough for him to get up. If we lose possession as he's coming up, he's gonna start coming back. So if we're giving up possession fast and losing possession fast, then he's kind of doing something very similar to the winger. He's going up and back, and this guy's also just going up and back because he'll only go further one way or the other if he was still defending or still attacking. So it's important to sort of recognize that this box-to-box midfielder role is not a very good role if you want to do like a direct counter-attacking sort of fast tempo, hoof the ball forward kind of system, because he's just going to end up running around like a headless chicken, basically. Now, that might, in the end, just manifest itself something that looks very similar to just being a central midfielder if it's super fast. But I think the point remains that that if you want to get the most out of this role, that you do, you can't necessarily completely control what the opponent is doing, and obviously, generally speaking, you do want to win the ball fast, regardless, anyway. And you do, but it does, you can still know what you're trying to do defensively, and you can certainly know what you're trying to do in regards to your build-up and attacking. So, I think, for example, if you're just going like direct passing, like into space, high tempo, whatever, you're doing a type of thing that it's like you're just trying to hoof it forwards and hope that somebody runs onto it or whatever. The box-to-box midfielder role is bad for that, because you're likely to just lose the ball before they can ever join. And the thing is, even if it works and you haven't lost the ball, quite often the shot will have happened. The attack has happened before this guy's got there anyway. So basically, he's running up to try to join something that he's never going to make. But like he gets here, but by the time he's up here, ready to say, "Hey, I'm here. You can pass to me on the top of the box." Like the striker might be through one-on-one or something, So he's typically just too late to join the attacks anyway. But he could be like the problem is if he's sort of getting towards there, he's about ready to join, and then your team loses the ball, and now he's like way out of position. He has a lot of backtracking to do to help defend. So this role is much better for tactics that are able to retain possession long enough that this guy can get forwards to help the attack. If he's never going to get there in time to help, it's a bad role. So we've got a bit of a weird tactical setup, because it's like we're not necessarily set up to get the most out of this. Now, we're not doing the direct sort of passing, like we're saying. It's not that worst case scenario, but we are mixed. We're doing a lot of mixed stuff in the faster tempo. So ideally, you would. I mean, maybe some of those things are okay, but ideally, like you wouldn't have a faster tempo, or you would have shorter passing, or something. Just something. It's not about saying that anything has to be something. It's just as a collective set of instructions and a collective tactic, you want it to be the case that your team is capable of retaining possession long enough that this guy can help with the attack, be part of it. Because if that's not true, it's not a good role. On the same note, looking at it from the other perspective of this, when he's tracking back, you let's say he's forwards and you've lost the ball, and he, unless he can get back to help defend, it's not a good role either. So you need to flip all of this around, and you need to think of it from the perspective of, is my team set up defensively that we can hopefully hold them up long enough that this guy can get back and help. And I think if you think about it, like, let's say we are attacking and he's fully committed to joining the attack, so he's up. The other thing you need to think is not just him. Let's go through the rest of the team. So this guy will also be all the way up. This guy, he will also be up. And this guy will be up, but probably not quite as far, so like halfway up, yeah? So you can sort of think of it like this. When we're fully committed to an attacking situation, this guy up a bit more, but not all the way up, right? So you can sort of think of it like here and across. This is what we look like. So we can, they hopefully, and it seems to be the case that hopefully that this is enough to, this offset here a little bit is enough that generally when it breaks down, that they will end up, when they're sort of coming out, building out, that they're more likely to go this way than this way. But obviously it's not a big thing, at least with how this looks. I think the main thing though is that this is the box-to-box guy, so he's likely a late arriver when he does get there. So he's not always here, right? He could be back here. He could be anywhere along here. So I think in the case where he gets all the way forwards, when the possession breaks down and they're going to attack out of this, I think the only reason why it's more likely to come down the right, quite frankly, is because it's more likely the ball, when it does break down, is more likely to be on the right. So that's needs to sort of how you think about it when you are attacking and you have this retaining possession long enough for your players to all get to where they're going to be. Where are they going to be? And if it breaks down earlier, where are they going to be then? You need to think in these terms. What is my team going to look like when the other team is attacking? So right now, we still have, even though it's a big sort of, it's like here it's all empty, right? So you are giving them up some space to move into the middle here, but we have where it sort of, I guess you could argue, matters the most. We have a lot of cover through the middle, so we are saying, when we do lose possession, they can't come straight through the middle easily. They can go anywhere else, but not just straight through the middle. So if they do end up going this path though, if they end up attacking through here, what will basically happen is this guy will look to just his destroyer, so he's going to be looking to step up to make that tackle. He's going to chase him down. So if they're coming through here, he's going to chase, let's say. So he's going to start pushing them basically down the left flank towards the left touchline here. This guy, he's just normal defender role, so he's just primarily thinking about defending his space. So yeah, like if the attack ends up close enough to him or whatever, sure, he's going to attempt the tackle. But in the first instance, he's just concerned with defending his area here. And this guy's cover, so he's going to be backing off a bit. So these defenders are basically just backing off the cover. This guy's just defending the space. This guy's running in for the tackle whilst they're coming down here. So he'll be pushing them wide a bit, maybe attempt the tackle, this guy backing off. But basically, we're pushing them into this zone when they're coming this way. That's what's going to naturally happen. And this guy is a winger. He's going to be coming back directly into that zone. This guy's the box-to-box midfielder. He's going to be coming back directly into that zone. So, and this guy won't be diving in. He'll be backing off a bit. These guys are backing off. So basically, it's kind of like a trap. You could think of it that way. We're inviting them into here. We're giving them that space. This guy's chasing them down in that space, pushing them basically towards the winger who's coming back. So this guy's box to box. He'll end up coming back to here, and this guy will end up back to here. And this is the exact space where we pushed him into, basically. So yeah, it's kind of like a trap. You could think of it that way. And from a sort of tactical concepts perspective, it is actually called trapping. That's what it is. So yeah. So I think that's quite nice. That little that's why I like the box-to-box midfielder in particular. But that makes sense if... Now, having said that, even if it is a central midfielder, I think there is a difference here if it is central, because he's not going to be up as much. And this guy won't be up as much. So there's less likely that they're going to come through here to begin with, which is key. Because if they're not coming through here to begin with, you're not trapping them there. So it's not a trap anymore. It's just denying the space to them and sort of saying, please come the other way. So I think in the case where we have the right players, so in particular this, by right players, you're basically saying if you do trap him in here, he might be white midfielder in the end, not sure, it depends on his attributes. So, but if we do trap them in there, that basically when these guys do arrive to help, these guys can tackle, basically. So our box-to-box midfielder needs to be able to tackle, and this guy ideally needs to be able to tackle as well, to make the most out of the situation where we're trapping them in there. And also we ideally would want to have an upgrade on this DLC, so that when we do invite them through here, if they end up obviously just taking on the DLC here, that he can win the tackle hopefully himself as well. So ideally we would have a better DLC that's sort of more capable of winning the ball in these situations. So I like that, to be honest. I like that. I like that concept about our tactic. The other thing that I think does work really well is this MC with that attacking midfielder role. Now, this is one of the bits, and I'm not quite sure how we get to keep doing it in a way that makes sense, because it's causing problems, quite frankly. But I like it. I like that he sort of, the attacks come through, he runs up, he's around the top of the box, and he gets a long shot. And he's quite open there often, because of a lot of the attention is being dragged away from him. I really like it. And you can see, like, he's scored 3 goals. They've all been long shots right from that top spot. He gets good shots from there. And he also 6 assists as well. So a lot of stuff happens from him being there. That's a huge output. Like, he's 15 crossing. He ain't taking any of the set pieces. So normally when players get a high assist, it's because they're just taking all the set pieces. But this guy ain't. So, I mean, all the corners and all the crossing and stuff, they're getting assists from that. Some bonus sort of free assists, if you like. So he's not getting that. And you can see in the youth team, he's playing central midfield as well, but he's just playing central midfielder role. And he gets loads and loads of pass attempts, but he doesn't, no assists and no goals. So totally different, right? So this role and the way that this tactic is set up, it gets so much out of it. Like, I mean, this position needs very specific attributes, in particular, like really high long shots. But that's why we did it this way, is because he has really high long shots. So I really like that. Like, this is such a contributing position, attacking wise. I think one thing we might quickly do just now is just look at our senior results. Now, I think unlike our youth team, however, we were just checking this quickly before. Unlike our youth team, he doesn't get that many pass attempts in the senior tactic. Our build-up play in our senior team is like really spread throughout the team, which you could argue is good, but for example, he only gets 5 pass attempts. It's not that rare in our youth matches. He's getting like 16 pass attempts. So he's not really that much of a factor, you know what I mean? Like, 5 pass attempts, a couple of headers, hardly any dribbling touches, like no tackles, 1 interception, like not really involved, didn't even have a shot, anything. So conversely, there is a bit of a problem that he's just not that involved. In this match, like 9 pass attempts, hardly any dribble touches. He did get one tackle, a couple of interceptions, a one shot attempt. So a little bit more involved that game. And in this game, so it's 9 dribbles. So it's just not much, like one interception, no tackles. And in this game, 8 pass attempts. That's really interesting. 0 for that guy. That's not enough to do often. Hardly any dribble. Got an assist. Again, no shots. So makes me weird because he didn't even have any shots, I don't think, in any of those games. So now I'm getting curious, like, because he has scored a few goals, so he must have been hyper efficient off of scoring those goals. No shots again in this game. So 6 pass attempts, a few headers this time, but again, just one tackle. Who was this one against? White Rabbit team. So now I'm curious where these goals came from. So none in this one as well. Got an assist in this one though. A few pass attempts. One tackle attempt. So he's not that involved. Right, this game. Had one shot attempt in this game. Couple of tackles and an interception. Hardly any dribble, one header. More passes than others, but that's I think that's just an abnormality. In this game, 3 assists, a hat-trick of assists, set all the goals up. 9 for 9 pass attempts, 2 interceptions. Right, so this is where one of the goals came from. Now I'm almost curious where. It took quite a while. So that 4 shot attempts, but he hasn't had that many shot attempts in other games at all, right? Not even like one, none in all the rest of them, so not that many shots. It's just worth bearing in mind, I think. And he didn't score in this game either. Load of pass attempts in this one. 2 shot attempts. And in this game, he got a goal. So somewhere we got a goal when we missed it, it seems. I'm not going to go back through them all. Had 3 shot attempts here. So, and not that many passes. So what I'm kind of thinking though is, like, I like that, but it causes problems, and I'm not sure if it's worth it. This is the thing. I'm not sure if it's worth it. Now, that is a high output, though. Like, if going through the matches, obviously, it feels like, obviously, it's going to be the case that if they've scored 3 goals in 12 matches, then most of the time, they're not scoring any goals in a match, obviously. He got 6 assists, 3 of those are in one match. That's the thing as well. So, you know, across all the rest of the matches, it's like every second match or whatever, he's averaging a goal or an assist. So but it's a high output. That's the thing. It's like, like I was saying, versus the youth, he's got none and none. So it's it really helps basically to be able to get creative, to be able to get your goals, to get your assists from different places, basically to have different ways to score, to have variation. And that was one of the things we were talking about quite a bit. One of the reasons why I really like this tactic is because the goals, they come from different, they come from different places. The assists in particular are coming from different places. You can actually see that the goals may be coming from different places, but they are coming from the same players quite seemingly here, so it's quite interesting. And the assists though are sort of again they are coming. It's not surprising they're coming from typically the more attacking players, but it's but the variation and type of chances and stuff is quite significant. Neither of our wide players have scored. Basically, if you look at the goals, they're coming from the striker. The strikers get really great chances created. The striker and the substitute striker, and they're quite different. They do different things, and we play a different role and create different types of chances. So that's really cool. And also, the AMRC here gets quite a few shots and assists as well. And then this guy is coming up, contributing. Now, going back to the tactics here, I feel like the issue at its core with this guy coming up and getting... because when you have the high long shots, ideally where you want them from is like right in front here, because the angle to shoot is better. Whereas this guy, for example, when he's having his long shots, they're often unsurprisingly offset to the right a bit, and it's just a more difficult angle. The keepers can cover it easier. So, ideally, this guy would be here, I guess is what I'm saying, in regards specifically to this one factor, and it's just one factor. But if he is there, then this guy will be running up, and they will be occupying the same space, both trying to get a long shot in the same space. It's not good. So, because at the end of the day, it's just a long shot. It's just it's just one option to score, and also to pass from the top of the box as well. So ideally you want, ideally you want that sort of extra options to move the ball around, and the triangles and all that stuff. So, but it's a problem. This is what I'm trying to say. Like, ideally this guy would be here, but this is blocking that. So I feel like these guys are just conflicting a little bit. They're both trying to attack. They're both trying to do the same thing. I kind of feel like it's a bit of a problem, but it also might be... start putting all this back. It kind of, just at its core, though, might also be why the attacks are to some degree working so well, because they're not in the same space. They are offset, but they are close proximity to each other. So basically, like, when this guy is up and this guy is up, there's 4 players through here. There's probably only 2 defenders, sort of thing, like dealing with this space, and these guys can just sort of pass or otherwise work around them one way or another quite easily, and it allows sort of attacks to develop. So it's not all bad at all. The other benefit is that when this guy is up, he's not really that exposed, because the destroyer is sitting here behind him as well. So yeah, but I think that's sort of like one issue, let's say. I think the other issue is that this box-to-box thing isn't that great, because our attacks are often breaking down too fast, because we are trying to... I think mostly because of that faster tempo, quite frankly. I think if we could change that to... we do some games, by the way, balanced or whatever. So we are changing these, but I think the reason why we're starting with faster isn't necessarily... We would ideally want it to be normal, I think. But the problem that we have is that these players, like this, he's okay. Who's the one? Is it Signorini? He's 45 vision, so he's like the in the middle here. And this guy is okay. Like 66 is okay, and 50 is it's okay. But our right midfielder and 65, that's okay. So it's quite okay. Carter, but we do try it. Maybe we should just be setting it, because it's not as bad as I thought, quite frankly. So that's maybe one thing we could look to change. Because we need to change it anyway. So we need to understand if it's going to be, if we need even higher. At this level, I say it might be okay for this level. This guy's high, the vision's not great. But, so my concern effectively is just that the passing isn't good enough that we want to constantly be sort of laying it backwards. We sort of generally just want to be advancing it forwards. And I think it's also because when you look at where our players end up in the end with the attack, like, we don't really have good options generally to want to be laying it back anyway. And we generally just want to be advancing forwards because all of our players are surging forwards, and because we've got to overload, we don't really want to be sort of constantly working backwards and basically giving more and more time to all of their midfield unit that's in here to sort of be coming back to help. So I feel like there's a bit of a like a conflict between what was he created forward? There's a bit of a conflict. There's some conflicts going on here, but I guess that's sort of natural. It's just about finding the balance. And the thing is, every match is different as well. But I feel like on the whole, like, we want this to be a box-to-box midfielder, but we're not necessarily giving him time to get up. We'd have to pay close attention to that one because we haven't played him on box-to-box a lot. So that's one thing. The other thing, I just don't like this offset in particular with that coming through. And we are inviting to trap them here, but also at the moment at least our DLC is not really the one that we want to say, you're sort of trapped here, you have no choice but to go through this guy when this guy isn't particularly great. Or, you know, he's pretty easy, let's say, to go through. So that's not particularly great either. But I think in regards to us moving forwards, like, this is this variant. Let's talk about the other variants a little bit. So one of them was this guy on central midfielder. And like I said, I think the main difference with this is that he won't get as far forward to attack, and he'll just be back a bit in line with this sort of guy. So you sort of end up with this situation where these guys are up, the attack's initiated and coming through here, and these guys are back. Both of them are back here. Like, realistically, they're not likely to end up involved in any of this attack that happens. So you sort of say they're part of the attack, like they're gonna, technically they should be able to help or whatever, but if the attack comes through here, they're probably not involved, they're probably not helping at all. They're only going to be involved in any attack that ends up building up through their side. If it does end up building through their side, all these guys will be up. So if the attack builds up through the left, these guys will be involved, and all these guys will be involved. But if the attack builds up through the right, only these guys will be involved, these guys won't. And we're trying to build the attacks through the right. So it's not ideal that basically we're saying that when the attacks go through the place we want them to go through, we are short of two players. Like, two of the two players don't end up contributing in the attack. That's not good. Now, if it's box to box, he could end up arriving a bit late and being part of it. And if he's there, part of this, then maybe this guy could end up being, he's in here. Hey, maybe he ends up getting chained into being part of it as well. So box to box sort of helps with that. And I feel like once he's central, this is a problem. You're just saying, we're just discouraging you from coming through here to begin with. And then you're back to the issue which we were describing before, which is that these guys are moving up and back together, so they're just taking up each other's space. So I feel like there's one more the variant, but I think this is the one of all of them that this just doesn't make sense to try to move forwards with this. Like, the fact that these two guys don't end up being involved in an attack that comes through the place that we intentionally trying to make attacks go through, that's bad. And the fact that these guys are just taking up each other's space and both trying to do the same job to some degree, that's just bad. And you're sort of denying them attacking through here at all, which, fine, if you want to do that, fine. but it sounds less cool than trying to trap him in there. Like, please come into my trap. Like, it feels way cooler. It sounds cooler, and I think like just if you're denying him coming through here at all, you're basically kind of saying like these guys won't be involved in the attack, like unless it builds up through there. If it does, they're kind of taking up each other's space. You're sort of saying that you're gonna make it. You're kind of making these guys redundant and this guy redundant by saying please never attack through here. 3 players not really contributing anything much. Like the whole point in trying to do all of this fine tuning is really to try to make the other teams, like certain players on the other team, redundant, so to speak. Like have not be as involved in the match. Like reduce their involvement. Not to be like reducing the involvement of your own players. We want to be like getting like trying to maximize the strengths and minimize the weaknesses of our players, but we don't want players not to be involved at all, right? We just want them to be. We want their involvement to be focused around what they're good at, and we want and to try to like reduce their involvement as much as possible in the things that they're bad at. Like that's what we're trying to do here. So just sort of like removing, like totally flat up reducing complete like total involvement in both all attacking and all defending for these 2 guys, and also defending for this guy. Kind of just, it doesn't make sense. So it can make sense like if you're dealing with an injury crisis, you've got a youth player on the team. It can make sense for situationally specific sort of scenarios where you got injured players in a match and you don't have subs that play the position. Like there's all sorts of reasons why for individual situation, individual match, you may want to be doing these types of things. But for an actual base of a tactic that we're trying to build and move forwards with, it doesn't make any sense. Like we don't want to do that. So I think this is not a variant that we're going to even bother exploring anymore for those reasons. It just doesn't have a future that we can build into. The other variant is this that we were playing quite a bit with. Now this one is quite different. Definitely, if you're doing this one, he would definitely be winning for sure. So I think this one is quite different. Like you definitely are not trapping him in this area at all. You're just sort of offsetting him to sort of just say, if they're going to come through here, it's not through here. It's just a long ball down the wing. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, they're coming through the middle more, like not necessarily down here, but it could be through here, sort of through here. So you're sort of saying like, yes, through the right, but it could be closer to the center now, especially when you consider this guy's up. So it's like a bit of a hole there. Or a long ball down the left. There's no sort of trapping or anything like that. You're just saying, don't come that way. This guy will sort of get back. Like at this point, it's like not even. Like, why is this guy even coming back at all to defend? That doesn't even make sense. Because you sort of set this up to sort of don't attack through here at all. So it's like he's coming back for nothing. So and then you've got the problem, like if he's attacking winger, then you sort of say don't bother coming back to stay up, and he can just stay up. But then the problem is like if he's like up here attacking here, like whatever, like he's completely isolated. This is the thing. He's just completely isolated. It doesn't make any sense to have a player that isolated. So this is one issue. If you're going to go with this path, like if you want to go this setup, like this whole left side is just weird. Quite frankly, there's 2 problems. Let's just be clear what these 2 problems are. So one, this guy's just way too isolated, like way, way, way too isolated. And the other problem is that this guy, basically, you're saying, please don't do anything. Like you're just not getting anything out of this guy. Now he's still like, I guess the one thing he needs to be able to do is just to try to focus on those long balls to the winger or whatever. So he would need to be really fast and really good at tackling, and they're the type of centre halves that are going to be hard to pick up, expensive to pick up, probably. It's just hard to get, and you're sort of trying to get this defender that's like got those attributes, and then you're saying you need to go in the spot that is also going to do the least amount of stuff in the match out of the 3 defenders. It's a bit weird. But yeah, I feel like, and then at that point, the Destroyer here, he'll be running to close down. He will have work to do, sure, but I think in regards to like also his intercepting capacity will be way less, because just because he's offset, basically he's not in the middle. So when all these guys are on that other, they're all up and they hit the long ball, like basically if it comes around anything around this whole area, there's a chance he'll intercept it. Where when he's offset like this, and this central midfielder guy is here, like he's sort of covering that space, he's sort of like they're, you know, the balls will come through here. Now sure, like other people will intercept them instead, that's kind of whatever, fine. But I think in particular we're happy for this guy to be doing the intercepting for our tactic, just because he's got really high passing. So if he does the interception, he's end up, you know, doing the pass. Let's get him back. So that's another problem, is that I feel like we're not. So at the moment, I feel like the problems are this guy's way too isolated. This guy, fine, I could wear this. Like, okay, you're not getting the most, 100% the most out of him, but you're asking other people to do a little bit more. That's probably okay. But also this guy, you're not asking him to do more, you're asking him to even do less. Feel like that's a problem. Like I said, this is a great solution though if we have an injury crisis and we needed to play one terrible centre-half and we have no choice. So this is a really good solution to try to minimise that extreme weakness. But it's just not. So it's definitely something we, regardless of how we move forwards, this is something we could keep as an option for specific scenarios. So it's still useful to know all this stuff, learn all this stuff. But I think for our base tactic, we don't really want to do that. And the other issue is just this area. I feel like he goes forward and he goes forward and he's there. And this guy's back for the triangles for them to lay back and refeed and resupply. And this guy would be up with the attacking winger role. And if that could happen, then no, he's there. So there's a problem. So, you know, I feel like that's okay. He's attacking winger, right? So, problem this guy too isolated. Now, going back, maybe the solution to this problem to reduce the isolation, just trying to come through solutions. I don't like this part here, by the way, but I'm just trying to work through how we could solve this other problem. So if he was attacking winger and he was attacking winger, they would both have to be, and I don't like that already for stability. It's less. Anyway, let's just go through it. Like we're dealing with the attacking sort of situation when it happens. So if this was our setup and we're attacking, then basically this guy moves up, this guy moves up, this guy moves up, this guy will hang back here. And this is actually like a pretty good situation, to be honest, that these like whatever, our really good long shots AMC is offset a bit, but like I said, there's a problem anyway. This is a way to get both, these two guys could both have really good long shots and they can both have their own space, so that makes sense. You've got a lot of all three of these guys have an option to like lay back and resupply into forwards. You've got a lot of stuff here that can create in particular a lot of sort of feeding the striker. Like there's a lot of, this could be very dynamic attacking wise, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And this is something that how do you say, this is something that can work okay with the not having to have fast tempo, basically, which means just in particular because you're okay with this when this is the attacking configuration in the end. You are okay with the players being willing to pass it back. Like, it's not perfect, we'll work it back, and you can end up sort of setting up an easy shot. So this is great. Which means that doing this type of thing would unlock the box-to-box midfielder role, basically. So, what could happen is he could be the box-to-box midfielder. Need a different player with different attributes, but he could be the box-to-box midfielder. And then he could be like offset here. So basically, if the trap comes through this side, like if they end up coming through this side, he will eventually get back to help. But he could be quite up for it. I think the interesting thing though, if you do this, we're basically going to have to invert things all of a sudden if we want the attacks to still come through the right. So he would need to be the box-to-box midfielder, and then he would need to be offset to there, and he would be central, and then you would want this player to be the attacking winger, and then this guy may be the regular winger or the wide midfielder, or possibly attacking winger as well. Possibly both of these. I mean, I think the difference with these wingers in particular, like these roles, whether they're winger, attacking winger, which side, it's pretty clear that if you were doing this, they would both need to sort of have the attributes that are needed in order to contribute to the attack. But I think the main problem with this in particular, so he would be up. He would end up up, and if he was attacking winger, he would end up up. We definitely need him to be like attacking to invite them if we want them to still come through the right, is what I'm thinking. This central midfielder hanging back here could be enough to to get them to come through this way. It's not a trap. You're not inviting them into a trap anymore. But maybe that's okay, because this is like all of a sudden you're saying, it's the same really. It's just you're saying, that you got a central midfielder offset on this part, makes this way a little bit more inviting. Your attacks are not necessarily always building up through here, especially with these two players. I think the issue with this, though, is that these guys are just constantly stacked on top of each other. Doesn't feel like it feels hard to solve this. So these two guys are stacked on top of each other. I feel like that's an issue. If that makes sense. Like, so they're not directly taking up each other's space too much, but they're this block just, I don't know. I don't think that's great. But maybe he could just be like there. Yeah, it's tough. He should probably be. So yeah, it's tricky. I think at this point, we got sort of options here. I think in the end, like, we do want to, I think if we put like attacking midfielder here and box to box midfielder here, attacking winger and winger, or wide midfielder. Maybe this is like the middle ground between all of these concepts that we're trying to talk about. So this guy is not offset, so he gets to roam around and intercept and destroy as much as possible. So we get the most out of him. We do get to have these guys up to generally invite the attacking play through this way to do what we want. This guy stepping up to make the tackles, this guy coming across. At the same note, we want the play to build up through here, but these guys will get up. The box-to-box midfielder will get up, so we'll end up being able to attack across the whole bank and hopefully work the ball around. We could play not with fast tempo to give the box-to-box midfielder more time to get up there. When we do lose possession, these two guys will come back. The ball could go through this way. There's no, we're sort of influencing it a little bit more. Like, this guy will be a late arriver, and this guy will not be quite as much up, so they will sort of be like halfway, let's say, generally. So it will be like this sort of area. So we're not saying they won't go through this way, but if they do, then, as we're saying, we're sort of pushing them this way. This guy will chase. This guy will not step on for the tackle straight away. He will be back a bit, and these guys will come back to help defend, and it will be like a trap. So we get the trap. We get this guy roaming around as much as possible. We get this guy still making, hopefully, more tackles than the other defenders and not needing to do anything else. We get our creative forward to be central, which is where we want him. We get more dynamic and varied attacking with more players genuinely involved. And the only thing we seem to have to give up is that this player that we wanted to keep here, we've had to move to offset here, so his long shot opportunities won't be quite as good. But really, instead this guy's long shot opportunities are better. I feel like that's a decent, to get all those benefits, that's a decent sacrifice. And all of a sudden, for all of our asymmetrical formation playing around, we've ended up with something symmetrical. But I think in particular, the way that this will play is not symmetrical at all anyway. It's at the end of the day, formation is just a formation. In a computer game, it needs to exist. In real life, it's pseudo arbitrary. What really matters is a combination of whatever what is really more about roles in real life. And yeah, you have areas of the pitch, but if you look at a heat map diagram of where all players stand in a match, yes, the team's formation looks symmetrical or whatever, but if you look on whatever, the AML and the AMR, they're heat maps that look nothing like each other. They're not like this one's in this exact spot on the left and the other one's on the exact mirrored spot on the right. It's just not like that at all. Just because you got two central midfielders, one's just not here. One doesn't have a heat map that looks around here the whole match and the other one here. It's just not like that at all. So, formations aren't really symmetrical, in real life at all. I'd say it's more, you need to think of it more in terms of roles, or maybe positions and roles in combination, which is what this is. So yeah, even though this now looks symmetrical, it won't play symmetrical at all because of all the roles that we've set. And that will, in the end, reflect in the stats. So we'll be able to look through the stats, and if you look over many matches, you will get these trends still, I believe, of these sort of concepts coming through. I'm not sure everything will work exactly as we want. We'd have to play some matches to get a better idea of that. But for now, I think we will give this a try. I think the other thing in particular is that we're just going to start off with a balanced tempo, everything mixed. I would say, broadly speaking, because you can look here, all of these now are just in the middle. And I'd say, unless this is generally tactically speaking what you want to do. Sorry, there's one exception, which is this one, which we'll cover in a second, why that is. But generally, you want everything in the middle, unless you've got a reason to set it somewhere else, because if it's all in the middle, there's only so bad it's ever going to go. But if you start setting these sort of tactical settings to things, and you don't, for not clear reasons, it can become like a whole mess, really. You don't, to analyze or to understand anything that's happening, it makes things really difficult. So it's better to sort of just have them in the middle, and when you set specific things to specific things for specific reasons, do that, pay attention, see if it's working out. Try to analyze and try to work it out. So, for now though, I'd say at least in regards to we'll give this a try. I think in regards to player recruitment, if we're traversing this path, like, we loosely have the players to support this. I think in particular though, our left midfielder is now injured, so that's going to make just straight away trialing this difficult. I think in regards to player recruit, we bought this guy, but in regards to player recruitment, we want this is a multi-role player. We want him to get forward to help with attacks and to defend. When he is getting forward with attacks, we will have a bank of 5 players across here involved in the attack. So we don't need him to do central things, let's say. We don't need him to cut in, so like we just need him to dribble the ball up the wing and deliver a cross. So we just want him to dribble with ball and cross and get back and tackle, basically. So this guy, we just need a workhorse. So like we need endurance, speed, strength. We need work rate. So we just need something for him to get up and back, up and down the wing, and we need ideally the strength so that he can perhaps, probably less important than this other stuff to be honest, but perhaps he doesn't get tackled so easily. And then the other things, we want dribbling and we want crossing. To be honest, this guy's kind of like what we need. He's not far off. I mean, ideally the endurance would be a bit higher, and ideally the work rate would be a bit higher, but you're not just going to get all of this. I think the main thing that this guy is lacking, that we kind of need out of him to have, is just more tackling. But I kind of feel like this, for at least for the level where we're at, like this guy is like will be perfect for our backup. So we just need to find our starting player who's hopefully just I think higher work rate in particular, because it is important for us, like how fast he's getting up and down the flank here, for his transitions between the attacking and defending. So that does matter to us. I think the other thing, like we probably got this guy loosely. This guy we're totally happy with. This guy, yeah, we'll just keep an eye out for like a really, really high tackling player that's otherwise limited as and when we find one. But for now, it's okay. I think we do need this defender to be replaced. We just need one that is somewhat faster. So he needs to get a lot of interceptions. He needs to run them to get them. And he's doing quite a few headers. We need more aerial ability. And also, when the attack does go through there, it's way less one-dimensional now. It's more like, yes, it'll come through here more often than through here, but it's still going to come through here quite often. So all of a sudden, this guy needs to be, quite frankly, this guy needs to be this guy. That's what it is. Ideally, we end up moving this guy over to DLC because he does everything we need him to do that. So that's great. And then we need a new guy here instead of this guy, who's kind of like this guy, who can do everything as well, but also who has high passing and vision, ideally, like higher than this for that ball playing role. So we're basically only one defender away, really, from having this whole configuration set fine. I think in regards to the DMC, like he's sort of just fine. I don't really see like we probably could end up starting this guy for a while. Sure, if we end up getting a player better, fine. I think mostly for the destroyer role in particular, like he will be chasing down people and making tackles. So, like, and ideally, just the tackling would be higher because of the role, right? Like all this, I think that's the main thing. There's a lot of other bits here. Like ideally, the marking would be higher, but he's not marking that much, right? He's running in to make the tackles, so the marking is way less of a deal for this destroyer role than it would be if he was some other defensive midfielder role. And ideally, because he's just running around tackling people, ideally he would be faster as well to sort of run, to be able to get to them, to close them down, to tackle them quicker. But I'm not gonna. If I was the only real thing in my view that ideally would just be much higher here, would just be the tackling. Ideally, if that was like closer to 80, that'd be awesome. Just because we want him, to alleviate a lot of the pressure on the defense. But honestly, I think we may be quite a while before we find an improvement on this guy. At least one that is, let's say like on low wages, and he's younger, and so on and so forth. The strikers we're just generally happy with. I think as far as this is concerned, because of the way the tactics and because of the build up, we're thinking all more in terms of all of these pieces, players. Let's follow American sports a lot to call the pieces for whatever reason. These players, the whole point of this tactic we're trying to create is that it's dynamic in the types of chances that it creates. So as far as a striker is concerned, we can work with any striker pretty much. We just want them to be really good, and if they're good, whatever they're good at, we will look to get the most out of that. And it probably doesn't change much with our tactic to be able to do that, to be honest. It's probably just changing this role to whatever's most appropriate for that striker, and maybe changing a tactical instruction, team tactical one. So maybe just, for example, like looking to play with a bit faster tempo, or maybe pass into space, or maybe just try to change some team instructions to just manufacture situations where maybe there's a bit more crosses coming in, or like a bit more attacking width, or faster tempo. Honest, the main ones are probably just the if they're more like a we probably could get most of what we want to do out of just changing the role without having to disrupt things too much. So, but we're happy with the ones that we've got. I think mostly just this guy's older, so we would ideally, like this guy, for example, is like fast and not that great at finishing. Obviously, we could find one this fast and great at finishing. That'd be awesome, but we're probably just not going to be able to do that. So ideally, we would get another striker that maybe instead the other striker is like really good movement, finishing, composure type of, like really good at not like just being like a poacher, basically. Ideally would have a goal poacher as the other one. So this way we've got like two different ways. We can do the build up and just get the ball to the poacher to score, or where we're struggling a bit and we can't get that all done ourselves, and we do need a striker that can, sometimes it's just like, oh, there's some space, we'll hit it over into the space he runs on and scores. Like sometimes we'll just need that. This guy's that guy for us, at least until we have to accept the fact that in order to make that true, he needs multiple chances, probably, with that finishing. But this guy is our poacher, and, it shouldn't be that hard to find a younger version of this guy that's, like, similar looking. So I'm not too bothered. We got time anyway to find him with that. I think in regards to this guy here, we want, like, really high long shots and just ability to sort of create stuff. So, like, this guy, for example, ideally he would have more dribbling. Ideally he would have higher long shots. Ideally he would have a higher vision. He was attempting some headers a bit, so doesn't just a bit. So ideally it wouldn't be 28, but it doesn't have to be high. Ideally he would be a bit faster. Ideally, you would have. I don't think he was taking that many close range chances because of the setup, so that's all right. I don't think we need necessarily that. So the main ones are really, I'd just say, the vision, the long shots, the dribbling, and if we could get a bit more speed, whatever, wouldn't mind too much. We'd be happy to get it, but it's not that big a priority at all for this player. It would be much higher priority, I think, out of all this stuff that he just had: higher dribbling, long shots, passing, vision. And if he could break a tackle, it could open up a lot of things. So the dribbling and the strength would be great. Just because of where he's standing, like if a player attempts a tackle on him around here, and he ends up not breaking through the tackle, like it's just a super high valued position for that to happen. So in particular, I think just that would be good. So that would be the main things I've been looking for, and it should be possible to find some player that ends up better. I think in particular, it's like 46 isn't high at all. It should be possible to get higher than that. And 62, it's decent enough. Like I said, we don't necessarily need. It doesn't matter that he's fast. If any of these players are fast up here, it's more important that the striker's faster. It's more important these wide players are faster. We're not too bothered about that, about this guy being fast. We want the passing and the vision and the long shots mostly, and more so than the speed, the dribbling and the strength would be much higher priority. It doesn't. Once he breaks through a tackle on the top of the box here, all hell will break loose at that point. the defenders will be scrambling. Hopefully, our striker will end up unmarked, and so on and so forth. So that's what we want to happen. The speed to run through whatever, it doesn't matter that much when you've got another player directly in front of them. So yeah, and then this guy, we just sort of, his main thing is we just want the main sort of winger stuff, to be honest. We just want him to be fast, good at dribbling and beating tackles and stuff, and delivering a final product with his crosses and stuff. So I think that's the main thing we want out of him. And this guy, I think, just he's the bit of a weird one. Like, we don't. I feel like there's a bit of a weird one in the tactic, and in the end, we may end up changing this role, quite frankly, just because I feel like yeah, in the end, we may just end up changing that one to something else. But I do feel like you want this player to get forwards with the attack. Maybe it's okay. We'll just have to say, we'll see with that. But yeah, obviously with this one, you just want the attacking type of attributes. They're not heavily involved with the pass, like just the passing, and the long shots was super important when he was central. I think it would be less so now. So yeah, we don't need a lot here, and I feel like with these changes, hopefully this will work. We've now managed to get out of the fast tempo, which we wanted for the state to, because if the game plays out a little bit slower, it'll be less hectic, and the less hectic it is, the more we can control the flow. So the more these types of concepts we're talking about, where we want the other team to attack through, and we want our team to attack through. If there's more chance for all these players to constantly be moving up and forth back into where we want everybody to be positioned, then there's more chance that that we can control basically the flow of how everything works. It's like dictating the tempo, if you want to call it that. Whereas if we just if both teams are just playing with a fast tempo and sort of just hitting the ball, and it's just constantly being turned over, it more turns into like a series of individual duels between players. And we're trying to move away from that and move into our team controlling the flow of the match, and to not be that bothered about the results of to just try to control. I mean, that's what we're trying to show here, is just with the tactics, how to control the flow of them, ultimately to try to make tactics that do what you want to do, that makes sense, and to show that it is possible. So I think that brings this discussion to a conclusion here. I think what we're going to do is, when we're looking at the scouting pool now, we'll be bearing this in mind. But yeah, I think what I might do now is I might just play a couple friendlies, or one friendly maybe, just because we can use our left midfielder when he's injured, and just to let's see all of that discussion that we just did about this. What does it look like? Does any of what we talked about even make sense? Does it even work at all? So let's give it a try, and I'll do that now. Cheers. See you in the next video.